Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Hello and welcome to Center Stage. I'm Alastair King and Daniels, and with me as always
is Peter Bates, and today we have the privilege of being joined by the talented photographer
Ivan Blazic.
Hi Ivan.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Cool. So we do this with everyone. We ask people who they are.
Sure.
On a deep philosophical level.
It's not a deep philosophy. What do you do, Ivan?
What I do? Well, at the moment, I'm unemployed between jobs, but only temporarily. I'm starting a new job next year. But other than that, 26 years old, BA degree from Rhodes University, studied photojournalism and philosophy. I do photography part-time. I tried to do it as a professional, didn't work out so well, decided to shift careers from there. So now I just do photography as sort of as a passion now.
Which is kind of, in a way, sometimes like better, because now like there's no like pressure on you. You can just do what you want.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can focus on the things I enjoy, which it's very different from doing client-based work. There you need to work with what they want, not with what you want. So I can focus on things like landscape photography, wildlife photography, and I can edit the images and work with the images however I feel is best, as opposed to, let's say the client wants a lot of Photoshop work done or this or that.
So when you have worked with a client before, right? Yes.
Yes.
What's it like?
What's the process like? So somebody approaches you and they say, we need photos of this. How does that work?
So it depends on it's context specific. If they want some sort of model shoot done, then I generally try to have an interview with them first, sit down, get to know them, see if they're comfortable with me, see if I'm comfortable with them. Sometimes I don't gel well with some people. Maybe they've got certain ideas that I'm just not comfortable with, in which case I'll refer them to another photographer that I might know. Otherwise, if we do gel, then I start to ask certain questions like, okay, how would you like this done? What sort of shoot would it be? Do you want it to be boudoir? Is it a beach shoot? Do you want to, anything? And so what kind of theme do you want to go with? From there, I'll start discussing times. Do you want it to be in the morning? Do you want it to be midday? Do you want it to be noon? That kind of thing. What kind of sort of feeling do you want people to take away from this? Are you trying to advertise something in specific, or are you trying to do a portfolio for yourself? Are you trying to sell yourself as a model, for example? Other times I'll get people just contacting me saying, listen, I'm going to sell a house now, or I'm about to open up a restaurant. Could you just come in and do some photos of the building itself? In which case it's pretty self-explanatory. I'll just arrange a time and date. I'll come in, I'll take the photos, I'll go home, edit them, bada bing, bada boom. So it's very context specific, based on the requirements of the client.
When you're on set, on location.
On location, yeah.
When you're on location, set, film. When you're on location, have you ever had the client do backseat photography?
I have, yes. Once or twice I've had people say things like, well, why are you shooting directly into the sunlight? Well, what's that about? Aren't you supposed to shoot away from that? Aren't you going to get overexposed images? I've had people ask me questions about my camera, like, is your camera up to scratch? In which case I'd say, well, it's a flagship model. I don't think you can get much better than this, to be fair. But then I try to remind them that it's not always about the camera. It really isn't. It's about how you control the light, how you work with the light, and the images you want to get at the end of the day. And then I've also had people look at some of my photos and then just ask me things like, well, why did you decide to shoot me at specifically this focal length? Or why didn't you go full body? Why did you choose to do this? And then I have to try and explain myself, well, for this reason. To try and avoid that, though, I do, for example, if it's a model shoot, I take, say, several dozen photos at different focal lengths, at different angles, so that one of those images they'll be happy with. I won't necessarily edit all of them, but I'll be able to present it to them afterwards and say, of these, say, 12 photos, which one speaks to you, so that I can go and work with it, for example.
It's like, in that sense, it's like quite a collaborative process. But do you prefer when they just trust you?
Sometimes, actually. Sometimes it also depends, I suppose, again, on the client. I've worked with amateur models, and then I've worked with professional models before. And the amateur models, that's very much a one-sided thing. Then I'm basically directing them. I'm telling them what to do, which it's nice, but model photography isn't my strong point. I do it, but it's not my strong point. I don't have the most experience in that. So when it comes to posing and that sort of thing, I could be better at that. As opposed to when I'm working with a professional model, I don't need to say a thing. I'll say, let's shoot here on this rock, let's shoot here in this alleyway, let's do this, let's do that. And the model will sort of just take initiative. They'll start just, I want to say, auto posing. They'll I don't know, it's you have to be there to see it. Yeah, you have to see it to believe it, sorry. But like they'll get into position in a spot and they'll just start messing with their hair. They'll suddenly throw their head back. They'll turn this way, that, and you just click, basically. Which is quite nice as well, because then it takes the pressure off of me of trying to figure out, okay, how do I want them to look? It's sort of in the moment, which also helps, by the way, because then the photos look very candid, which I prefer. I'm not much for look at the camera and smile kind of thing. I'm not big on that. So that does help a lot, yeah.
Is that why you like doing more wildlife and stuff? Because it's like completely candid?
Yeah, it's completely candid, and it's mostly down to luck. I can't really plan what's going to happen if I'm out on safari and I see a whole bunch of animals. I can't say, look, listen, we're going to have a cheetah come in the next 5 minutes. I need you to put on your game faces here. I need you to run like hell and make this look good, you know. I kind of just have to hope and wait, which is also the nice thing about it. I've had days where I've gone out, I've taken, 300 photos, and I hate all of them, you know. But in being out there, I just get the chance to be out in nature and enjoy myself and relax. But then I'll have other days, and I'll start my day out on a game drive. 5 minutes into it, I'll have something insane happening, and that's my photo for the day, you know. So it's also part of the experience of just being out there and being in nature and just kind of going with the flow that I really like. Yeah.
So when you take the photo.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's
sure.
Perfect. You do all the apertures, and I don't know the words.
Yep.
The exposures.
The settings are perfect, yeah.
Is there ever like a photo where you go, this does not need to be photoshopped in any way or edited at all? Like it's perfect as is?
No, never.
Why?
Mostly because, mostly because images in and of themselves are designed to be flat. The color profile of the image is designed to be flat, and it's done like that so that you can take it into post and work with the color to sort of make it how you... I'm not sure how else to explain it other than working in, say, a log format when you do filming. When you do that, you film, but the colors are very washed out and gray, but it's done specifically so that you can take it into post and then tune it to how you want, so that it's not too oversaturated or too much. It's done like that in photography as well, especially when you're shooting in RAW. JPEG, not so much. JPEG, it'll compress and then it'll do slight adjustments to make the image look a bit better. RAW format, which is what I shoot in, generally the images come out a little bit more washed out than normal so that you can put it into post and work with it. I used to actually, when I was just starting out in photography, I had this very purist mentality. Looking back on that now, I think I was very wrong. I used to have this purist mentality that, you know, you should be like, I think his name was Ansel Adams, the very famous photographer. The image, you shouldn't do anything to the image. If you do anything to the image, it's as if you're taking the image again. And he was all about not doing that. He said, you take the photo, you develop it, in his case, and you leave it alone. And I thought I should be like that. I should be like Ansel Adams. And then I realized, nobody's like that anymore. People don't want that. And your images, you could make an otherwise dull image look so much better if you just run it through some post-processing. Maybe adjust your highlights, your shadows, your contrasts, maybe add a LUT or something along those lines. And then it sort of just maybe dodge and burn, and then the image just pops, is the best way I can describe it. And so to answer your question, no, I've never, aside from when I just started photography, I never take a photo and just upload it. I always do some sort of post-processing. The least amount of post-processing I do would be sharpening. I'd say that all images always need to be sharpened to some degree or another using something like an unsharp mask in Photoshop. And then a little bit of color correction, just because, like I said, the images come out quite washed out and gray when they come straight from the camera. That would be the bare minimum that I would do before putting a photo up.
Is there something to be said, though, with relying on like the digital so much when they, like, in the past they used to do a lot of practical effects to get the same sort of effects? Like,
they still do to a degree. I think I know where you're going with this. So lighting, smoke, glitter effects, that kind of thing. So you can do both practically and digitally, but I'd say it's dependent on, again, your outcome, what you're hoping to get here. I've gone and taken photos of some animals, say running, for example, and I would look at it and go, there's not enough dirt and dust in this photo. So I would digitally add some of that using Photoshop brushes, overlays, that kind of thing, and blending it in such a way that it looks, you can't tell that it's not real. But there are other cases when you're doing a certain style shoot that's exactly what you want. You need to have the physical effect to make this work. You just can't replicate it digitally. I suppose it depends on what you want to go with. I love practical effects. I think they're sick. But the drawback of physical effects, so like smoke and things like lens balls and prisms. People use like prisms to they'll hold it just out of frame of the camera, and they'll use it to add a sort of lighting effect to the camera. So an in-camera effect, as it were. The drawback of things like that is that then once you have the image, that's it. You can't change it. If you have that photo now and you realize after the shoot is done that, I screwed up here, you can't do anything about that. As opposed to, okay, I've got the image as clean as possible. Let's transform this into what we want now using fake effects. So
it's like high risk, high reward.
High risk, high reward, yeah.
So what separates a good photographer from a great photographer?
I would say their photographer's eye. That's a term that I was taught way back when. It's something that generally you need to develop yourself. You start by modeling your work on other photographers, people you look up to. So I don't know. In my case, I looked to a wildlife photographer called Mike Nichols. He I think he still is a National Geographic photographer. And I mean, that's what I was aspiring to be at the time, was a National Geographic photographer. So you take their work and you try to mirror it. You see how they went about taking photographs and that kind of thing, and you work on your photographer's eye. Now, I think a good photographer, better than your average Joe, is one who is able to walk into almost any situation and figure out the best way to capture it, as opposed to somebody else who will generally just walk in, hold the camera at eye level and take a photograph. Not that that is bad, but generally a good photographer will be able to take 10 different photos and all of them will be able to look very, very different, as opposed to an average photographer who can't see those different angles. As a good example, I recently had an engagement shoot with now my fiance, and one of the reasons I picked I picked the photographer for us. She's also going to be our wedding photographer. And one of the reasons I picked her was because I liked what she did with her photographer's eye. I saw that I went through several dozen wedding photographers, and I went through their portfolios and I looked at their work, and they weren't bad. They were really well done. But what separated this photographer from them, to me, was that she was taking the same photographs but differently, from different angles, using different lighting techniques. She was able to see the same subject that all these other photographers were seeing, but from a different point of view. And to me, that's what makes a great photographer. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks. Yeah.
Ended on a good note there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I learned a lot about photography. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for being with us today. And are we going to wrap it there?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for joining. And thank you so much, listeners, for tuning into Center Stage, the South African Film and Theatre podcast. We will see you next Thursday. Goodbye.
Bye.
Cheers.
King Media Productions Center Stage is a South African film and theatre podcast hosted by Alastair King and Daniels and Peter Bates and produced with the generous assistance of Blended Podcasts, brought to you by Blended Audio.